So I'm often obsessed with what is new about design and what is new about innovation and what are the things on the horizon that speak to the place that I practice, which is design innovation. But recently I've been curious about this progression of design. Where has design been over the last several decades, last couple of decades as it relates to innovation? So I've been looking back to my bookshelf and looking to the books that have informed the way that I think about design and kind of like marking where they are kind of on a timeline. So I thought I'd just share that with you and just share a couple insights that I think are interesting about the way that the artifacts, the books themselves, not their words speak to design and how design and human-centered design advances innovation, but the artifacts, the design of the book themselves speak to a trajectory of design that I think to me it becomes pretty evident. So here's a book, 2001, The Art of Innovation. What I love about this is that it is the art of innovation. We're talking, like the subtitle here is Lessons in Creativity from IDEO, America's leading design firm. So the book, of course, is about design, it's about creativity, but the design of the book speaks to a type of design. And you'll notice here that the visual metaphor actually begins right here at the very beginning. The visual metaphor here is print registration. So you see these little print registration cues all the way through. And registration is an indication of precision. And here we're seeing like this registration show up in each of the corners, and you can follow it, and they use this really precise thin line to match up these details when they're calling out a photo in the caption and all that. So you can see the beautiful little details and the precision involved. You see the really generous leading in the design of the book and the readability. You'll notice that the font is this really thin serif, really trying to just hammer down the craft of the presentation of this book in order to really reinforce what design is bringing to the table from this moment in time. All right, so moving along, we're going to go to a couple years. This is 2004, a book where design has really been trying to push a bigger conversation. And you'll notice in this book here that design is being used to really grab your attention. It is alarming. The amount of color, the use of typography and photography are assaulting in this book. And if you think back to 2004 and design really just trying to get a seat at the table, these were the kind of tactics that were really common. You could see these kind of design treatments used to assault and stop and have a conversation, which although this book isn't specifically about design, it's a book that's using design to have a deeper conversation, which is exactly what design is trying to do at this moment in time. Which in 2005, this little book came out from Tom Peters, who's been a huge advocate of the power of design. And the book is a chaotic, assaulting, it's not a mess. It is, I think it's a great moment in time about how design is being used to have a different conversation, to draw the reader's attention to a new way of thinking and interpreting the world. And I think this little book does a fantastic job in using design to do that. But again, it's assaulting. It's trying to use the practice of design to say, hey, look at me. We have value. We can do some things. 2006, here we have the beginnings of design management. Wow, that's some weird words you don't see typically colliding until about this time. And here we're using design still in a bold way, but you'll notice that the grid is solid. You start to see to see some strong predictability in the layout, saying design is, hey, we're here, we can provide some structure and some creativity, and we're still going to be palatable as a tool for having a conversation about design and management. So you can start to see how the aesthetics, the presentation, begin to really reinforce the value prop that design is trying to bring to the table. And then 2009, something changed, and that is change by design. Here we have a significant book into the design conversation that is primarily for business leaders. It's not for designers. It's surely not trying to win anyone over with the aesthetic or the craft of design. Now, although the book layout is about as generic as it comes, there is a hint at the future of design, and that is here printed in the front cover. And you see the new aesthetic approach that becomes the design language, the visual language that designers have been using with trying to have a bigger conversation. And that is this kind of like industrial design sketch or whiteboard marker kind of aesthetic that like this is, in my opinion, a great example of 2000, 2000, what did I say, 9? Something like that. Let me just double check. Yeah, first printing 2009. This notion of using the aesthetics of design in this manner, now it's not about the precision and the craft. It's a lot looser. It's a lot more inclusive. It's a lot more. The level of fidelity is just dropped all the way out, and that's because the conversation about design has shifted from being about the craft of it and more about the thinking of it, which leads me to this book here in 2016, Strategic Design. Here's a book just specifically about strategy design, and you can see the aesthetics here speak directly to that kind of whiteboard industrial design illustration. So you can see these are the kind of aesthetics throughout. You can still see a really solid grid being used and some generous white space, but the visual tone is not about the craft or precision of design, but about the inclusivity of design. And I think that's been the nature of how design has changed over the last couple of decades. Anyways, these are just some observations that I'm making about the crafts, the artifacts that we make, talking about our craft, and just noticing the change in the way that we talk about it, but also the way in which we present it, going from on one end of the spectrum, this very inclusive sketch drawn approach, to on the other end of the spectrum, this book is still about creativity, but really just driving home the precision and the clarity that design brings to the details. So I don't know, for whatever that's worth, I find it interesting, and quite often the pendulums kind of swing, so it'll be interesting to see where this conversation goes next. But I think the artifacts that we create when we talk about the thing that we do are a good representation of where we're at in the moment, where our head is at, and kind of like where we see things going. So these things are interesting to me, and hopefully that's interesting to you. We'll catch you later.